get started today, there are a couple of things I want to talk about. The first is, this is very good news. Bob got, you may have gotten it also, Bob got an email from Sam. He did get his work done, and so yes, he is graduating today.
Yeah.
So obviously they're not here today. I was a good girl and I picked out hymns for the day that we know. So we don't sound terrible. The other thing is, we all need to be thinking, in particular tomorrow, about our veterans and the sacrifices they have made, how this has impacted not only them, but their families, and the work that they have done to help keep this country safe. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the Michael Brelow verdict. You know, this is such a difficult situation. It really is, and it is a problem that has been brewing for years, and it is bubbling up. And if you know anything about me, you know that I am a realist. And for me, the reality is, in any group of people, you have people who behave well and people who don't. In any group of people. And when I was working as a legal secretary, one of the things that early on that I was very involved with was divorces. And of course, you know, your client would come in and say, oh, you know, I'm completely innocent, it's all the other person's fault. Well, when you started looking at the entire situation, the truth is there were contributing factors on both sides. It takes two to tango. And I know from being a policeman's wife that being a policeman is a very hard job, because you are seeing people at their worst, the worst behavior, the worst everything, all the time. And it is very hard to not be impacted by that. And at the same point, you've got this killing that is going on that is, you know, it's questionable. It is. You've got the blacks not trusting the police not trusting the blacks. You've got kids that don't know how to react when they are approached by the police. You've got adults that don't want to follow the rules. You know, when Tamir Rice was shot, it reminded me of I'm dating myself, this is back before they put Highway 271 in. My parents and I were living in Warrensville Heights, and that whole area was a great big, huge, just overgrown area. And I've always loved nature, loved all of that. So I would be out in the woods, cruising around, horsing around with my dog with me. And at one point I was probably, I don't know, about 11. I found an old shotgun that had no bullets in it. But what I would do is I would jam it in the dirt and then fire it, and it would blow the dirt out of the end. See, and I thought this was fun, and I had this little poodle named Curtsy, and she thought it was hysterical, you know, so she'd be, you know, I'm just horsing around with this thing. And one of the neighbors that lived nearby called the police. And when the guy came out, now of course this was in a different location at a different time, the first thing I did was pick up the gun and hand it to him. Nothing happened. And when I thought about Tamir Rice, it occurred to me, what if that kid was thinking of doing the same thing? Pull it out of my waistband and give it to him. Because nobody ever taught him, you know, when the police come up, you keep your hands where they can see them, and you just stand there. You don't make any movement. That is the safe way to deal with the police, because then the police know that they don't have to worry about getting shot, and you're not going to get shot. I don't know. Maybe that's what he was going to do, maybe it wasn't. But I do know that there is a whole lot of friction going on. Obviously, these families are grieving, and one of the biggest emotions that shows up with grief is anger. And it doesn't matter if you're grieving over the loss of a human life, loss of a job, loss of a marriage, loss of your health, whatever it is, anger is one of the big emotions that comes up. So I can feel for them. I can feel for them. I can also understand the other side as well. And yesterday, you know, on the TV, some of the family members are saying that, you know, their family members were murdered by the police. And then later in the day, I had talked to someone I know on the phone, and her opinion was, those blacks in Cleveland are all a bunch of monkeys and we ought to send them back to Africa. So you've got all of these different viewpoints, and what's really, really needed right now is not burning down the town and killing people and all this kind of stuff. But both sides need to come to the table and work together to make things better, because there is fault on both sides. There are problems on both sides. And I am really hoping and praying that that can happen. Now, I'll start out this morning. I actually remembered these. You know, what can I tell you? Our opening words this morning are number 428. Please stand, and we will read this together. Come out of the dark earth, here where the minerals flow in their stone cells, deeper than seed or birth. Come into the pure air, above all heaviness of storm and cloud, to this light-possessed atmosphere. Come into, out of, under the earth, the wave, the air. Love, touch us everywhere with primeval candor. And our first hymn this morning is number 290. 290? Yeah, I think. Let me make sure that's right. Let me see. Yes, 290. Bring, O past your eye.
Oh, much better than 219.
Yeah.
Bring, O past your honor, bring, O time your harvest, golden sheaves of hallowed lights and minds by truth made free. Come, you faithful Spirit. thanksgiving, bell of grief and gladness, forth to town and prairie let our festal greeting go. Voices long departed, in your tones re-echo, praise to the highest, peace to all below. Shrine of frontier courage, sign of its vision, home and hearth of common quest for life's immortal good. Stand in years oncoming, sentinel of conscience, as through the past your stalwart walls have stood. Church of pure reformers, pioneers undaunted, company of comrades sworn to keep the spirit free. Long o'er life's swift river, preach the eternal gospel, faith, hope, and love for all humanity.
See how beautiful that was? This we believe. O
Source of peace,
lead
lead us to peace, a peace profound and true. Lead us to a healing, to mastery of all that drives us to war within ourselves and with others. May our deeds inscribe us in the book of life in blessing, righteousness, and peace. O source of peace, bless us with peace.
And our chalice lighting, please. At
Times our own light goes out
and
is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us.
Please feel welcome at this time to come forward and light individual candles of joy and concern.
For those who can't be with us here today, those that protect and serve here and overseas, community of ours. Wow. I've only done this for 10 years. And for our veterans who don't have the chance right now to be with their family because they gave the ultimate sacrifice. Something bigger than themselves.
For Mr. Don, who is not feeling well, so he's been sick for a couple of weeks. And this is for my nephew Johnny and the families of the 2 Hawkins students.
This is for my brother who served in Vietnam. This is for Charlene, our daughter-in-law Michelle's mother, who will not be with us much longer. And this is for all the people in our country right now who are being ravaged by flooding and rain and drought and all kinds of oil spills and things that are not good.
Somewhat popular this time. This one's for those that I served with that did not come home.
May we have our offering at this time?
Rejoice and love, we know and share, in love and beauty everywhere. Rejoice in truth that makes us free, and in the good that yet shall be. Amen.
Scripture this morning is on restraint and moderation. Admonitions to restrain from evil, which are found in every religion, open this section. Notable is restraint in Jainism, where ahimsa, or nonviolence, is practiced to the extent that one is careful as one walks, eats, drinks, and breathes, so not to kill even insects or microscopic animals. There are admonitions to refrain from acting wrongly, even when the mind is full of evil promptings or when the crowd is urging. Silence and discretion are valuable allies in this regard. Some texts urge us to set up a fence and honor a clear boundary line, marked by prohibitions and moral principles, so the good and evil may be clearly distinguished. The ground must be swept clean of confusing debris, and areas of gray avoided, lest we fall unwittingly into a mistake. The section concludes with passages which counsel moderation in all things. Excessive behavior of any kind, stinginess or profligacy, mortification of the flesh, or drowning in sense pleasures, self-righteous action or action to please others, should be eschewed in favor of the golden mean or middle path. From Islam, forsake the outward sin and the inward. Surely the earners of sins shall be recompensed for what they have earned. From Buddhism, just as a wealthy merchant with only a small escort avoids a perilous route, just as one desiring to live avoids poison, even so one should shun evil things. From Buddhism, good is restraint in deed, good is restraint in speech, good is restraint in mind, good is restraint in everything. The bhikkhu restrained at all points is freed from sorrow. From Jainism, realizing the retributive nature of karmas, a wise man refrains from accumulating them. From Hinduism, the highest charity is refraining from violence. From Islam, let him who believes in Allah in the last day either speak good or be silent. From Jainism, the very first principle of religion laid down by Lord Mahavira is ahimsa, non-injury to living beings, which must be observed very scrupulously and thoroughly, and behaving toward all living beings with proper restraint and control. From Taoism, he who acts harms, he who grabs lets slip. Therefore the sage does not act, and so does not harm, does not grab, and so does not let slip. From Sikhism, why endeavor in the way of evil, as therefrom is received evil retribution? If you take a long view, you would not practice evil at all. Throw your dice in the manner that with the Lord you lose not the game. Direct your endeavor to profit. From the African traditional religions, a single bangle does not make a sound. From Confucianism, Mencius said, only when a man will not do some things is he capable of doing great things. From Judaism, the emptiest of you are all well packed with religious observances as a pomegranate with seeds. For everyone who has the opportunity of committing a sin and escapes it and refrains from doing it, performs a highly religious act. How much more, then, is this true of those behind your veil, the modest and self-restrained among you? From Hinduism, under the sway of strong impulse, the man who is devoid of self-control willfully commits deeds he knows to be fraught with future misery. But the man of discrimination, even though moved by desires, at once becomes conscious of the evil that is in them and does not yield to their influence, but remains unattached. In the African traditional religions, however hungry you are, you do not eat with both hands. From Buddhism, that things have being, O Kakana, constitutes one extreme of doctrine. That things have not being is the other extreme. These extremes have been avoided by the Tathagata, and it is a middle doctrine that he teaches. And from Taoism, your name or your person, which is dearer, your person or your goods, which is worth more, gain or loss, which is the greater bane. That is why excessive meanness is sure to lead to great expense. Too much store is sure to end in immense loss. Know contentment and you will suffer no disgrace. Know when to stop and you will meet with no danger. You can then endure. And our next hymn this morning is number 318. And it is, We Would Be One.
we would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Now, our special music this morning is one of my absolutely favorite songs, and it is My Sweet Lord by George Harrison. going to continue talking about Rob Bell. And Roger and Bobby, you haven't been here the last 2 weeks, so are you familiar with Rob Bell? Okay. We're going to be talking about his view on hell. And he starts by talking about how several years ago he was in San Francisco to give a talk, and protesters gathered outside of the theater. And they were telling the people who were standing in line to hear him speak that they were in trouble with God because they were coming to hear him speak. And one of the protesters had a jacket on that had "Turn or Burn" on the back of it. Fury, wrath, fire, torment, judgment, eternal agony and endless anguish. Trust God, accept Jesus, confess, repent, and everything will go well to you. You're going to go to that golden city in the sky. But if you don't, you are in serious trouble. If you refuse to confess, repent, reject Jesus, then when you die, the anguish begins. Is that Jesus' message to the world? Is that how it is? Is that what God is really like? Loving, kind, full of grace and mercy, unless you don't confess, repent, and find salvation in this lifetime. And then God is going to punish you forever. Is that the Christian story? Ah, but is that what the Bible says? In the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament, there is not an exact word or concept for hell other than a few words which refer to death or the grave. What we do consistently find are affirmations of the power of God over all life and death. Psalm 16, "My body will also rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the realm of death." Or in Samuel, "The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up." And of course, this statement is talking about the circle of life. In general, in the Old Testament, God's involvement in whatever happens after a person dies is never clearly articulated or defined. It's vague at best. For whatever reasons, the precise details of who goes where, when, and how long was not something that the Hebrew scripture writers were terribly concerned with. It wasn't important. Secondly, the Hebrews used the words life and death in a very different sense from the way we use them today. We're used to people speaking of life and death as fixed states or destinations. Either we're alive or we're dead. What we find in the scriptures is that the Hebrews understood life and death to be two different ways of being alive on this earth. Did you get that? The Hebrews understood the words life and death to be two different ways of being alive on this earth. For example, when Moses in Deuteronomy calls the Hebrews to choose life over death, He is not forcing them to decide if they want to get killed on the spot. Instead, he is confronting them with the kind of life they want to choose to keep living. Now, the one kind of life is in vital connection with God, in which they experience more peace and more wholeness. The other choice is to remain where they are, as slaves of the Egyptians, and that life is indeed a living hell. In the New Testament, the actual word hell is used roughly 12 times, and almost exclusively by Jesus himself. The Greek word that gets translated as hell in English is the word Gehenna. G-E, first two letters of that word mean valley. Henna means Hinnom. Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom, was an actual valley on the south and west side of the city of Jerusalem. Gehenna in Jesus' day was the city dump. People threw their trash, their waste, human and animal, and rotting food and whatever, into this valley. There was a fire there burning constantly to consume the trash. Wild animals fought over scraps of food around the edges of the heap, and when they fought, their teeth made a gnashing sound. So Gehenna was the place where there was gnashing of teeth, and there was a fire that was never allowed to go out. It was also an actual place that Jesus' listeners would have been familiar with. Now, was that a place where people wanted to go and live? No. For one thing, it stunk. For another thing, you've got this fire burning waste and garbage and yada yada. You've got rotting food, you've got animals running around fighting over it. Nobody wants to live at the city dump. However, was it a place where sinners upon death were sent to suffer eternal agony? No, it was just the dump. So, and I do like Rod Bell's sense of humor, he suggests that the next time somebody asks you if you believe in an actual hell, you can tell them, yes, I do believe my garbage goes somewhere. The idea of hell is a holdover from primitive religion that used fear and punishment to control people for all sorts of devious reasons. And Bell says that he has a real hard time believing that below the Earth's crust, someplace, there is this crafty guy in red tights with a three-pronged spear playing Pink Floyd records backwards and listening to the message. It's ridiculous. Now, in talking about what hell is, Bell starts in talking about his trip to Rwanda in December of 2002. He saw numerous children missing hands, arms, and legs. As he was being driven from the airport to his hotel, he saw 50 or more teenagers missing limbs. And the guy that was driving him, who was his guide for the trip, explained to him that during the genocide, one of the ways to most effectively degrade and humiliate your enemy was by cutting off an arm or a leg with a machete. And then, if they survived that, they would have to live for the rest of their life with the reminder of what had been done to them. Isn't that hell? It certainly is. Val asks if we have ever sat with a woman while she talks about what it was like to be raped. How does a person describe what it's like to hear a 5-year-old boy whose father has been murdered asked, "When is Daddy coming home?" How does a person describe that unique look, that ravaged, empty stare that you find in the eyes of cocaine addicts? Belle has seen what happens when people abandon all that is good, right, and kind, and humane. He says it is absolutely vital that we acknowledge that love, grace, and humanity can be rejected. From the most subtle rolling of the eyes to the most violent degradation of another person, we are terrifyingly free to do as we please. God gives us what we want, and if it's hell, we can have it. We have that kind of freedom. We have that kind of choice. It's called free will. We have the freedom to create hell on this earth. When our choice is negative, we then experience the full consequences of our bad choices. Unfortunately, most people never change their behavior until it causes their own misery. The pain we have caused ourselves is what finally gets our attention to make positive changes in our lives. And that's what we find in Jesus' teachings about hell. A volatile mixture of images, pictures, and metaphors that describe the very real experiences and consequences of rejecting our God-given goodness and humanity, something we are free to do anywhere, anytime, and to anyone. Jesus uses very graphic images often, telling people to gouge out their eyes and maim themselves, rather than commit certain sins. And he's obviously very worked up about this. But when you've talked with a woman who has just found out that her husband has been cheating on her for years, and you realize what that is going to do to their marriage, their children, their finances, and their future, you can see the concentric rings of pain that move out from that one man's choice. In that moment, Jesus' warnings don't seem so over the top. Some agony needs agonizing language. Some destruction does make you think of fire. Some betrayal actually makes you feel like you've been burned. And some injustices do indeed heat things up. One of the main themes of the New Testament is that Jesus is bringing forth a social revolution in which previous systems and hierarchies of greed, corruption, and cruelty need to be done away with. However, this was not a call for war, because war would only cause more killing and more suffering. I mean, if you look at what happened to the Jews, Jesus is preaching nonviolence. If you love and care for one another, you can make your lives better. Then in 70 AD, the Jews actually openly revolted against Rome. And what happened? They were demolished. They were demolished. Hundreds of thousands were killed. Many hundreds of thousands were taken in as slaves. And the Jewish Jewish tribes were scattered to the winds. In the teachings of Jesus, love is more powerful than hatred. Love is the thing that this world needs to heal. Jesus is calling all people to a human solidarity. Everyone is a brother, a sister, an equal, all children of the same Creator who shows no favoritism. Do we have any questions today? Any comments? Okay. Then we have got our final hymn, which is Life is the Greatest Gift of All, number 331.
Life
Is the greatest gift of all, the richest on this earth. Life and its creatures, great and small, of high and lowly birth. So treasure it and measure it with deeds of shining worth. Mind is the brightest gift of all, its thought no barrier bars. It seeks creation's hidden plan, its quest surmounts all bars. It rains the wind, it shades the storm, it weighs the outmost stars. We are of life, its shining gift, the measure of all things. Up from the dust our temples lift, our vision soars on wings. For seed and root, for flower and fruit, our grateful spirit sings.
Our closing words this morning are from Frank Holmes. Let me not cry peace, peace, when there should be no peace in the everlasting war of good versus evil, or of the better against the worst. Let me not accept as inevitable any unnecessary suffering or cry impossible before the dream of a more just world. Keep alive within me this day, O Lord, the sacred flame of indignation. Help me to say no to whatever is inhumane, that by my word and courage the forces of decency and fairness may be strengthened in my time.